Well, there's been a lot of controversy about the RFK Jr. campaign ever since he came out. Really strong support for Israel. There's been a lot of chatter, especially in the independent media world. He was on Jimmy Dore's show, said that he would debate or have a conversation with Max Blumenthal. Now that has been apparently it's not going to happen. We're going to get into that. Max Blumenthal has given an update saying that the RFK Jr. campaign is saying it is a no-go. They do not want to be debating Max Blumenthal. They're not going to be debating anybody until they can debate President Joe Biden. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. With us now is independent journalist and co-host of the Convo Couch, Craig Pasta-Jardula. Craig, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Kim.
So you've been following RFK Jr. often at many of his campaign events. In fact, you were there today. There was a campaign event. Was it like a documentary that they showed about his time at the border? Is that what it was?
Yeah, it was a 12 to 13 minute documentary about his 3 day visit to the border, the southern border. And not only was it just a little documentary about what he experienced, and he talked a little bit about this on Jimmy's interview just recently. Um, but it was kind of like, I think, a kickoff to let the voters know that this is going to be a campaign issue of his, one he's going to champion the problems at the border, to shed some light on what's going on there and how he's going to handle it.
Did he? What is his position on it? Is it more? From what I've read, he seems to lean more to Republicans and their stance on the border than with Democrats.
You hit it on the nose right there. That's what I felt it was today. However, it was showing a large sense of compassion to the people of what's going on there, the crisis itself. But I think it's kind of more or less the same, where it kind of deals with a lot of the surface level stuff, very myopic. What are we going to do at the border itself, rather than the actual cause of migration, which is what I questioned him on when I got my one question.
What did you ask him?
I asked them, I said, why are we concentrating so much on the border when we know, we look at statistics from the Border Patrol, when they release their statistics, that still 87% of the people who are coming across the southern border for the last year have been from Latin America, South America and Central America. Why aren't
Yeah.
we concentrating more on the 82 bases that are there, which are pretty much occupying these nations and actually turning the countries upside down? They're also funding these NGOs, that's the United States government, where they have these murder death squads. If you know the combo couch, that's the work we do. We go down there, we see this type of stuff, and they want national sovereignty. They want these bases closed, the majority of the people. And that's what's causing the migration there. So I brought that point up to him. He's also seeming, Kim, to make this point about the cartels trafficking a lot of people over there. So within my question, I was able to mention, why aren't we looking at the actual cause of migration, which is these bases? And I also mentioned that the CIA is also kind of is controlling these cartels that you talk about. And he agreed on both points. And at the very end, I asked him, are you going to make a commitment to close these bases? And he said, absolutely, yes. It's one of his foreign policy uh, points, is to try and close a lot of these bases and the money we spend overseas. So he was on point there. The presentation was about what we do at the border, closing it down right now, building up an infrastructure where a lot of people can't, get across, and the cartels can't smuggle people over. But he did seem to, be open to the idea that he wants to also go at the cause of migration. So even though the pitch did seem to be more to the Republican base there, he was kind of going to the common sense leftist anti-imperialist mentality and saying we have to, take care of our foreign policy. And he knows a lot about Latin America. He said he's been to the majority of the countries down there.
Did the topic of Israel come up?
No, it was about the border, and all the questions seemed. He took questions from the press. What it was a. You can go in there, you can watch the movie. There was about 100 people watching the movie, and there's about 30 to 40 press members. And at the end of the movie, he did a little speech. He talked about what was going on, and he took about 10 questions, all from the press. Nobody brought up Israel. They were only talking about the issues at the border and Latin America.
Okay, so let's get into Israel, because actually one of the ways that this came up with RFK Jr. and his stance on it was a question you had asked him. You were kind of the one that kicked off this by pressing him on the topic of Israel. What was the event where you had asked him to clarify his stance? What event was that?
He was in New Hampshire talking to the New Hampshire State Senate, encouraging them not to move their primary back, to keep it to be the first primary. The state has
Yeah.
the right to set when their primary is to be taken. So he was there to encourage them not to listen to the DNC, not to move it back, that New Hampshire was very, very special and important because you have to actually go into barbershops, diners. So he was encouraging New Hampshire, the state Senate, to keep their primary where it's at. He then had a press conference right after. That's when I went in the room, and that's when I opened up this can of, craziness, which everybody seems to be following up his stance on Israel.
Do we have this? We're going to play the clip, actually.
I love Max Blumenthal.
Oh, no, yeah, this
Mr.
one.
Kenny, a lot of people are confused about the tweet storm. I call it the tweet heard around the world. A couple of tweets were put up in support of Roger Waters and then taken down. Do you want to give us a little explanation of why they were taken down and also your stance on Israel and Palestine?
I tweeted that. I made the tweet applauding Roger Waters' courage in opposing the COVID mandates and the Ukraine war. I was unaware of his position on Israel. And when I learned that, I immediately took it down. My position of Israel is that I support Israel. My family has a long relationship with Israel. I support its right to exist and its right to protect its security.
And the Palestinians?
And a humane outcome and a recognition ultimately of the aspirations of the Palestinian people is important for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, he says, I really support Israel. Then he's now said that, I think, more boldly and much more, for a while it was like, well, we could still kind of interpret this comment maybe a certain way, only because in doing research on him, his past remarks, he has said throughout history things that, yes, he supports Israel, but he also supports the Palestinians. He was much more in the past, when we look at his past remarks, much more equal and measured in his responses. Lately, though, he seems to be taking a really strong stance in support of Israel. Do you think that what do you think is behind that? Do you think he actually just genuinely feels that way? I mean, it's hard for me to believe that when he has made statements in the past that where he has supported the Palestinian people. So I'm kind of wondering if there's something behind this, like maybe his campaign is heavily funded by people who are very much in support of Israel and the Zionist movement. I mean, what do you think?
I think it's more about Jeremy Corbyn. And I think he knew that the DNC was going to come out there and try to attack him as an anti-Semite. So I think it's about him running for president more than anything this time, in which he's overplaying that hand. I mean, Fiorello, my co-host, has said that he's been the most pro-Israeli, pro-Zionist candidate out there. And at first I was like, nah, Zionist is a Zionist. But he is definitely going the extra mile there. And it's kind of hard to argue the fact that he's overplaying this hand. But I think it has a lot to do with Jeremy Corbyn. I think it has a lot to do maybe with his wife. His wife does work in Hollywood, and maybe he doesn't want to cause a lot of static for her. So, that could be the case. But I definitely think it's more about him running for president and what's going on with Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, because he has made statements even with the man who allegedly killed his father is Saran, which is a Palestinian man. And he's actually argued for forgiveness for him to be let out of jail. He doesn't believe that he actually was behind killing his dad. He's then made other statements just throughout history about giving equally to the Palestinians and to the Israelis, saying that if we're going to give to the Israelis, that's fine, but we should also be giving the same amount of money to the Palestinians. And now there's just like a completely different shift in his tone. So he's been now questioned about this on different, I haven't had a chance myself yet to ask him about it. I haven't had him back on the show since he's made these statements and since this has come up. But before we get to what he said on Jimmy Dore Show and what's going on with Max Blumenthal and the controversy there, why do you think this is, explain why you think this is such a pressing point for so many people, especially in the independent media world, where they're really saying, okay, that's it. His stance on Israel is a deal breaker, not willing to support him anymore. What do you think it is about his support for Israel? What does that point to that makes people uncomfortable?
Well, I think a lot of this pushback and this anger is coming from the anti-imperialist left, the common sense left, the people who go down and do this work. Also people who just have always, for quite some time, had this as their number one issue. Um, it is only one issue, and I don't want to leave it as a small issue, but it does have a kind of web where it can spread out to a lot of other issues. Israel's involved
Right.
with a lot of our legislation. APAC has a lot of power and pull within our Congress, so it is not just a small issue. It isn't the only issue, but it is a pretty much a big issue. And it's been a red line for so many people for quite some time because you turn on the TV, you see what's going on, and you constantly see the Palestinians getting slaughtered, getting killed by the Israelis. I hate a stance on it, and quite frankly, I know a lot of supporters, friends of mine that support RFK. They hate that stance too. But I mean, you have to do a cost benefit analysis, and you got to understand what's at stake here. World War III and the annihilation of our planet is very, very important. I think he's the best on Russia. He surely stands alone when it comes to the COVID protocols. He's great when it comes to censorship and also food sovereignty. Everybody's yelling Medicare for all, Medicare for all, Medicare for all, like it's 2016. And I'm not saying that people don't have shouldn't have health care as a human right, but we learned from the COVID that our system is a sick care system. It is just terrible. And what we put in our food, in our water, what we're allowing these corporations to do, he also stands alone there too as well. So I still think that's why a lot of people are willing to turn a blind eye to the situation. Because guess what, Kim? Everybody in Congress has the same situation. Nothing's going to change if he gets in or if he doesn't get in when it
Yeah.
comes to Israel, Palestine. And that's what people have to just realize and understand.
Well, I mean, I get it. I understand I mean, I'm massively disappointed by his stance on Israel for sure. I mean, I definitely, he's made some statements, and we're going to go over that. Some of the statements that he's made that is just patently false, saying that, oh, well, they just target military. Israel only targets military targets. They don't actually target civilians, which is just, quite frankly, bullshit. It's just not true. We have so much evidence, obvious evidence, and it's factual that they have killed many children who are massacred. There's already dozens of kids who've been killed in 2023 alone by the IDF. So this is, saying that, oh, they only target military, so it's extremely disappointing, his stance. I mean, I'm totally disappointed by his stance on Israel. I worry, and I think this is a big concern for people, is that Israel has had such a grip on our foreign policy for so long. They've been able to get us to march all around the Middle East, wreaking havoc throughout the Middle East and destabilizing the region, going to war, having a constant presence there. And a lot of us believe that that is because of Israel. We are working on behalf of Israel to destabilize Iran, destabilize Syria, destabilize Lebanon, destabilize Egypt, and then Egypt we restabilize because we're like, okay, they're going to be on the side of Israel, so we've got to help them out. So it's been, so I think many people are worried that his love for Israel, it seems, would end up meaning he's going to continue the never-ending wars in the Middle East. That's what that translates to. It's not just about the Palestinian people, because quite frankly, if it were just about the human rights abuses that are happening to the Palestinians, then the same people who are outraged by his support for Israel would be outraged by every other candidate support, nonverbal. They don't even have to state it. Like, oh yeah, we still need to do business with Saudi Arabia, even though they're doing what they're doing in Yemen, or we're still doing business with, there's a bunch of different countries that we're doing business with or who are at war. And a lot of the same people, for example, who are saying they're really angry with RFK Jr.'s stance on Israel are also still, many of them are supporters of Russia and what Russia's doing in Ukraine. And it's like, how do you square that? I don't know how to say, okay, we should be doing business with Russia despite what they're doing to the Ukrainian people, which, I'm on the side of this was NATO that really, really escalated this and got us to this point. There was like a definite provocation there, but nonetheless, there's still people being massacred. War always brings about human rights abuses. Why Israel specifically, rather than pointing out all these other countries that are also doing abuses to people that are weaker than them?
I think a lot has to do with the Holocaust. A lot has to do with our programming and our teaching and everything else that we learned growing up. And let me say this much too as well, Kim. People are out there, they're saying, well, he is lying. He's lying about this. He's knowing what's going on and he's lying. you brought up a good point that back in the past he has said some words that are a little bit more sympathetic to the Palestinian people. However, this is a guy who lived with Larry David for a little while, right? You know, he's got close Jewish ties and Jewish friends. I grew up in Boca Raton, Florida. I went to a predominantly Jewish school, and I had a lot of friends whose fathers and mothers were mentors of mine. A lot of fathers who were so pro-Zionist that you kind of adopted what they said. You didn't agree with it, but you just heard it. So I mean, I know a lot of great guys, a lot of awesome people that I grew up with that are just pro-Zionist. So
Yeah.
it's part of our culture. It's part of our class. I mean, how many years did we study the Holocaust in school? I mean, every single year we were studying the Holocaust.
Right.
Meanwhile, the Armenian genocide, I think it was like one chapter and one page. We didn't look at other things in other areas and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think that is why. And they've always played this card and they've always drilled that into our head. And anytime you spoke out, you know, people would bring out, you know, if you spoke out against Israel, they would bring up the Holocaust. So
Right.
that's why it's just always been a tender issue within our society.
Yeah, it's like it's very divisive. It's just like particularly divisive versus like nobody really bats an eye if you say, "Oh, actually, I back Azerbaijan or Armenia." Like nobody says anything either way. Like they're not really caring. Or if you say, "I support
Yeah.
Turkey," no matter what Turkey has ever done to whoever it might have been, you know, or continuing
Or
to do.
France, what they're doing in Africa, right? I mean,
Right.
there's
Yeah.
so many different countries. It's
Right, but this one is definitely, you know, a real sore spot for a lot of people. Okay, let's go ahead and so it's interesting that there is a big, I think, especially within independent media, a rejection of RFK Jr. entirely because he takes the stance that is pro-Israel. I mean, to me, it's like they're all pro-Israel. So, and that's status quo. That's been the way. It's not new. I wish it would be different, but it's not new. It's status quo. It's always been this way. Every candidate, every president we've ever had has been pro-Israel. So I don't know. In my mind, a candidate, that's not worth, for me, saying then you're completely, I'm not going to vote for you. You're totally off limits because you happen to be the exact same as everybody else in the status quo, when there's so many other things that you're not status quo on. There's so many other things that you're pushing back on. To me, I'd rather have like 80% of something than 100% of nothing. Right. So, but let's get to the controversy now. So he was on Jimmy Dore's show. There was a lot of people who were unhappy with his interview. They felt like Jimmy Dore should have pushed back on RFK Jr. more. And they felt like, he was just going soft on him. But I think there's a thing to be, there's something to be said about being polite and pushing. So here's what he said about possibly talking to Max Blumenthal.
I love Max Blumenthal, but I do not think he's objective on Israel. I think his reporting on Israel is not it needs to be questioned.
Okay, well, here's what I would ask. Just like Peter Hotez ducked you and Joe Rogan, I would love, because Max is the guy to talk to about this, not me. So would you do an interview with Max, because he would be able to talk to you about this way better than I can. I'm really not good at this.
Yeah, I would love to talk to Max.
It's interesting he thinks Max isn't objective when it comes to Israel. Does he think he's funded by the Palestinians or something? For one, Max is Jewish, right?
Yeah.
So does he think that, I mean, to not be objective, if you're not objective, it's because you have reason to not be objective. You have like an emotional reason for that, right? So you are Palestinian, or you are funded by the Palestinians, so you can maybe have a conflict of interest. You're maybe married to a Palestinian. I mean, Max is none of those things. If anything, his bias would be leaning towards Jews in Israel because he himself is Jewish, or was born, in a Jewish family. So what do you think? Why do you think what do you make of
It's
that?
the body of work. It's the body of work, right? It's everybody knows Max is pretty well known for this particular subject. I think Katie Halper would have been another good choice too, as well, when it comes to this. Perhaps if you ever got a chance to talk to Cynthia McKinney, who spent a couple days in a Jewish prison when she went over there on a flotilla and was always pushing back within Congress against the AIPAC lobbyists. So I mean, I think it's his body of work. Just when people know about the gray zone and Max Blumenthal, they know about his work he did in Israel. So, I mean, I've heard people call Max, a self-hating Jew, like, people back in Boca Raton, Florida, where I grew up. So that's why, he feels so strongly about the situation. I think RFK knows about that. But here's the thing, Kim. You know, it's not that I wouldn't want to see that, but I don't think that RFK is going to change his stance on it. Like, I think he's set there. That ship has sailed. He sucks on it. So just either say you're going to deal with it or you're not going to deal with it. If you're going to walk away
Right.
from RFK because of the situation, so be it. That's fine. My issue is the fact is that a lot of these people in the anti-imperialist left, friends of mine too as well, are not just attacking RFK, they're attacking his supporters. I mean, using terms like sycophants and fanboys and, just downright, smearing, what cultists was another one I heard. Now, I heard somebody the other day call people, and this is from the left, calling RFK supporters right-wingers. I mean, it feels like the Tulsi Gabbard situation all over again, really, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth. And I really can't stand it. If anybody's going to attack me, I'm going to defend myself. I'm going to defend my neighbors. So that's really what's disappointing about the anti-imperialist leftists who can't deal with this. If you don't
Yeah.
want to support him because of that, that's fine. But don't hate on us who are trying to do anything. We're throwing everything at the wall here. And I think it was Brett Weinstein who said the other day to you, this might be our last chance. We might lose it all here. That's where we're at. And
Right.
what else are we to do? So, I mean, I'm not going to hold it against people either way if they want to support or don't support. But let's not attack each other here. That's what's really bad.
Let's go ahead and read the tweet. So Max Blumenthal said that he reached out to the RFK Jr. campaign, and they basically said, no, they're not going to be doing it. He says a day after RFK Jr. agreed to Jimmy Dore's proposal to publicly discuss his pledge of unconditional support for Israel with me, his comms director was dialing me up to offer a series of unbelievable excuses for why this could not happen in the foreseeable future. He goes on to say in his Gray Zone piece on his website, which anybody can read and kind of get more details onto it, but he basically says that they're saying that he's unwilling to do any debates. He's running for president. He's not going to do any debates until he can debate. The only debate he wants to do is with Joe Biden, and that's his only focus. But then Max brings up in his Gray Zone piece that, what about Dr. Peter Hotez? He was willing to debate him when that was brought up about COVID, but now he doesn't want to debate me when it comes to Israel, claiming that, hey, I've got other things to do, like run for president. So he's clearly avoidant on this issue. He's clearly wrong about this issue in saying things like, Israel's the only country, they're the only Middle Eastern country that targets military targets and not civilians, which is not true. Absolutely not true. The ratio of death between Israel and Palestine, it's for every one Israeli, it's 20 Palestinians that get killed. The majority of them innocent people. And then the Israelis say things like, well, they're using human shields, so we had no choice but to kill all those other innocent people because they were hiding amongst them. That is not targeting military targets. I'm sorry, that is just not, there's no truth to that statement whatsoever. They target civilians oftentimes for fun, really, if people were to really research what goes on over there. For fun on Friday nights. The IDF will go in Gaza on Friday nights. There's the youth get together and they protest what is happening to them. And the IDF sits up high up and they start shooting them with rubber bullets, but they hit them in the eye and they know that they're going to lose their eye. They hit them at closer range, knowing that it's going to cause damage. Doctors go in there. American doctors will go in there and do surgeries on these Gazans and try to help them. They then take videos and images of what's going on, and that gets confiscated by the IDF when they cross back over into Israel's borders from Gaza. They erase that data. I've seen that with my own eyes happen. It's insane what is going on over there. I would love it if he could be more educated on this. This is so disappointing. It really is. Totally disappointing.
Yeah. Well, you know where the common ground would be is to come back on and talk to you about it. And people have mentioned that too as well. Somebody had said they were going to go meet RFK at a rally tonight. Not a rally tonight. It's kind of like what do you call those things when you're getting together for teaching to go out and knock on doors and
It's some
for the
sort
campaign.
of campaign, right?
Yeah. So somebody was going to say, well, hey, when I get close to him for a picture, maybe I should say, hey, Kim has been there before. Maybe you should go and talk to Kim Iversen about that. I think you would be a common ground there right now. But, here's the thing. RFK said he would do it. He put his foot in his mouth. So I think he should do it. Even though I don't think a lot's going to come of it, I think he's still going to just deny.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if he necessarily thinks he knows he's lying. A lot of people say, yes, he does. Yes, he does. But like I said, I grew up in Boca Raton, and everything that came out of his mouth I've heard people say, before about this. I've heard Zionists say this before. They either believe this or make themselves believe it. So I don't know. And at the same time, too, as well, maybe that article came out a little bit too quick. Maybe Max should have relaxed a little bit and tried to work the angles a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? Pump the brakes.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we all do things differently. I'm still waiting for my interview right now. When I was done asking the question, that communications director was right behind RFK, and she said thank you, like to end it off really quickly. If you go back and watch
Yeah.
the clip, so I mean, I know they weren't crazy about that question. That is one of the toughest questions in politics, but I thought it was a good thing for them to put it behind them. But the fact that he keeps doubling down and going on with Rabbi Shmuley, it's
Oh, I
like
know it.
now he's overplaying that card. But then you have Debbie
Yeah.
Wasserman Schultz in that whole hearing pushing him, so he doesn't want to be
Right.
another Jeremy Corbyn. It's just a crappy situation.
It is, but I would love to see fewer images and videos of him with the Israeli flag and more with the American flag. I just don't want to see any
Yeah.
candidate with any foreign flag, quite frankly. That's just the way I feel about that. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly disappointing. It's certainly disappointing. Politicians disappoint us all the time. You can't fall in love with them because they will always disappoint you. But I definitely am not a purist. I don't think that I have to like a candidate 100% in order to vote for them. I just have to think that they would be better than what we've got in office. Now, people could say, oh, that's incrementalism. We're incrementally going in the wrong direction. It'd be good to go
Exactly.
incrementally, at least in the right direction, even if it is
Yeah.
incremental. I'll take it if that's what it means, going in the right direction rather than the wrong direction, which we are rapidly going in. Craig, thank you so much for joining this show. Where can people find your work?
You can always go to my Twitter at @YoPasta. I'm at the Convo Couch with my co-host Fiorella Isabel. So you can find us on Rockfin, Rumble over there too as well. And of course, I will be on the campaign trail. Not only RFK, but I'm going to pop in and see Mr. Cornel West if he's out and about. Maybe Vivek Ramaswamy, whoever's out there. I don't think I'll be following Joe Biden. I think they got enough people on that if he ever comes out of the White House. And I
doesn't
don't think
go
I'll be
anywhere,
following
right?
Donald Trump either. Yeah, I know, right? So,
Yeah.
but the
Well,
other
Donald
fringe
Trump
characters,
just
the ones
goes
on the
in and out of
periphery.
court. He's just in and out of court. And then Joe Biden doesn't go anywhere except the beach, apparently, every so often. So, yeah. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Craig. Thank you so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kim.
All right, guys, let me tell you about Field of Greens. This stuff is so great. It really is, because a lot of times green drinks taste blah, but this stuff actually tastes really good. This is a fine powder that you just mix into your ice water, or you could put it in a variety of things. Get creative with it. If you want to bake it into brownies, put it in soup broth. There's a variety of ways that you can actually use this very fine powder, but I like mine particularly most in ice water, and you get all of your daily fruits and vegetables just in this one scoop. And they're carefully crafted, dehydrated whole fruits and vegetables, organic, everything's super high quality. And just with that, you're going to get all of your fruits and vegetables that you're probably not eating every day if I were to be a betting woman. I know I'm certainly not. I try. Do I try? Do you try? Do you actually really think about all the different fruits and vegetables you eat each day, and you're thinking, I better get all the colors and all of the right amounts? Like, none of us really do that. So Field of Greens is a great way to get that into your diet. You're going to sleep better. You're going to feel healthier. You're going to have more energy. You're also going to lose weight because you're not going to crave all of the crap that we all end up craving throughout the day. So get your Field of Greens. You can get 15% off your first order by using the promo code Kim. And look around their website. Look at all of their other products. They have some really other great products there. Everything's high quality. I've used many of them. I highly recommend them. I personally like the lemon lime flavor, so that's just my recommendation of the actual Field of Greens drink. But you go to fieldofgreens.com, use that promo code Kim, and get 15% off your first order.